Imagine opening a garage door, not to find one car, not even 10, but over 5,000 of the rarest, most expensive automobiles ever created by human hands. Ferraris that never touched a public road. Bugattis so rare that fewer than 10 exist on the entire planet. Rolls-Royces custom-built to specifications that no dealership could ever offer. Bentleys with interiors finished in materials that cost more than most people earn in a lifetime. Cars that collectors would spend decades hunting for, sitting silently in climate-controlled hangars, row after row, stretching further than the eye can see. This isn't a scene from a heist film. This isn't a fantasy. This is Tuesday morning in Brunei. And today, we're pulling back the curtain on one of the most extraordinary concentrations of personal wealth the modern world has ever witnessed. By the time this documentary ends, you won't just be astonished. You'll be asking a question that has haunted economists, historians, and ordinary people for decades. How is this even possible? Chapter 1. The Kingdom, the World. Forgot. To understand the Sultan of Brunei, you first have to understand Brunei itself. And to understand Brunei, you have to look at a map. Find the island of Borneo in Southeast Asia, one of the largest islands on Earth, shared by Malaysia, Indonesia, and a tiny nation wedged into its northern coast. That tiny nation is Brunei Darussalam. In terms of landmass, it is smaller than the state of Delaware. Its entire population is fewer than 500,000 people, smaller than most mid-sized American cities. But beneath the lush rainforests and calm coastal waters of this small country lies something that changed its destiny forever: oil and natural gas. In 1929, oil was discovered in Brunei for the first time. The scale of what lay underground took decades to fully comprehend. But by the mid-20th century, as global demand for energy exploded, Brunei's modest landscape became the source of staggering wealth. For context, at the peak of its production, Brunei was pumping more oil per day than some OPEC nations with far larger territories. The revenue that flowed into this tiny country was almost incomprehensible relative to its size. And because Brunei is not a democracy with complex redistribution systems, it is an absolute monarchy, that wealth flowed directly to the royal family. The royal house of Bolkiah has ruled Brunei for over 600 years, but it was the 29th Sultan, Hassan al-Bolkiah, who would take that ancient lineage and reshape it into one of the most iconic displays of personal wealth in modern history. Chapter 2. The Man Behind the Legend. Sultan Hassan al-Bolkiah was born in 1946 and ascended to the throne in 1967 at just 21 years old. He was educated in Malaysia and later at the Royal Military Academy Sandhurst in England, the same institution that has trained generations of British royals and military officers. When he returned to Brunei to take the throne, the country's oil wealth was still accelerating rapidly. The 1970s oil crisis, which devastated economies around the world, actually made Brunei richer as global oil prices soared. Through the late 1970s and 1980s, Brunei accumulated wealth at a rate that had no real historical precedent for a nation its size. Forbes and other wealth-tracking organizations placed Hassan al-Bolkiah among the richest individuals on Earth, and at certain points in the 1980s, estimated his net worth at figures exceeding $30 billion. Some reports placed him even higher. The precise numbers are impossible to verify because Brunei's royal finances are deeply private. But the evidence of what that wealth looked like in practice? That is impossible to hide. Chapter 3. The Car Collection That Defies Comprehension. When people around the world think of the Sultan of Brunei, they think of cars. Not because cars are the only extraordinary thing about his lifestyle, but because the scale of his automotive collection so far exceeds anything else in the world that it becomes the detail that lodges in the mind and refuses to leave. Reports, sourced from journalists, collectors, former employees, and royal observers, have suggested that the Brunei royal family's combined vehicle holdings may exceed 5,000 individual automobiles. Let that number sit for a moment, 5,000. If you drove a different car from that collection every single day, it would take you over 13 years to drive each one once. The collection spans virtually every prestigious automotive brand in existence. Rolls-Royce, the British marque synonymous with royal transport, has reportedly delivered more cars to the Brunei royal family than almost any other single customer in its history. Some estimates suggest the collection includes over 500 Rolls-Royces alone. Ferrari, the Italian manufacturer's most exclusive and limited production models, cars produced in numbers of fewer than 50 worldwide, are represented multiple times in the collection. Bugatti. In the 1990s, when Bugatti was revived and produced the extraordinary EB110 supercar, the Sultan placed orders that represented a significant portion of total production. Later, with the legendary Veyron and Chiron, Brunei again became one of the brand's most significant buyers. Lamborghini und Porsche, Bentley, Aston Martin, McLaren, da Pagani, Koenigsegg, Mercedes-Benz AMG. But perhaps the most astonishing chapter of the collection involves cars that simply do not exist anywhere else. When you are wealthy enough, you don't browse a catalog and pick a color. You call the manufacturer directly and describe what you want. One-of-one Ferraris built to personal specifications and never replicated. Rolls-Royces with exterior finishes developed specifically for a single customer, their formulas then locked away and never used again. Custom Bentleys with interiors trimmed in materials chosen from swatches sent to Brunei from the finest leather and wood suppliers in Europe. These are not upgrades, these are commissions, the automotive equivalent of hiring Michelangelo to paint your ceiling rather than buying a print. The cars are housed in vast, climate-controlled facilities designed specifically to preserve them. Many of them have never been driven outside of these buildings. For certain automotive historians, this is a tragedy. Machines of extraordinary engineering heritage, aging gracefully under careful preservation rather than roaring down open roads the way their designers intended. For others, it is simply the purest expression of collection. Preservation as respect. Whatever your view, the scale is simply without parallel. No museum, no private collector, no automotive institution anywhere in the world holds a collection of comparable depth. Chapter 4. Istana Nurul Iman, the palace at the end of the world. The cars, extraordinary as they are, exist within a broader context of almost theatrical luxury. And at the center of that context stands the Istana Nurul Iman, the official residence of the Sultan of Brunei, and by most measures, the largest residential palace on Earth. Let's talk about scale. The palace covers an area of approximately 200,000 square meters, roughly 2.15 million square feet. For comparison, Buckingham Palace in London, one of the most famous royal residences in the world, contains about 77,000 square meters of floor space. The Istana Nurul Iman is nearly 3 times larger. It contains 1,688 rooms, 297 bathrooms, a banquet hall capable of seating 5,000 guests simultaneously, a mosque within the palace grounds that can accommodate 1,500 worshippers, stabling for 210 polo ponies, 5 swimming pools, a helipad, and garages that stretch across multiple levels, housing portions of that legendary car collection. The interior finishes reflect a philosophy in which no surface should be left unadorned. 22-karat gold leaf covers portions of the ceilings and walls. Imported Italian marble lines the floors. Chandeliers imported from Europe cast light across halls that seem to extend to the horizon. Hand-woven carpets from the finest mills in Persia and Turkey cover areas measured not in square feet, but in acres. The palace was completed in 1984 at a reported cost of over $1 billion, a figure that would be multiplied several times over in today's money. It is not open to the public. For most of the year, it sits largely sealed from the outside world, glimpsed only during the Sultan's birthday celebrations when thousands of Bruneians are invited to receive traditional gifts of food and money at the palace gates. Chapter 5. The Fleet in the Sky. If the cars represent the Sultan's passion and the palace represents his home, then the aircraft represent something else entirely. They represent freedom. When you are the ruler of a sovereign nation, international travel is not a leisure activity. It is a professional necessity. State visits, diplomatic meetings, trade negotiations, royal occasions. But when you are also one of the wealthiest individuals on Earth, the manner of that travel becomes a statement in itself. The Sultan's personal aircraft fleet has included some of the most lavishly converted private jets ever documented. A Boeing 747, the same aircraft used by major international airlines to carry hundreds of passengers, converted into a flying palace for a handful of occupants. The interiors of such aircraft, when commissioned by ultra-high net worth clients, bear no resemblance to what most people experience on a commercial flight. There are no rows of economy seats, no overhead bins, no plastic food trays. Instead, private suites with full-size beds, dining rooms with formal table settings, meeting rooms fitted with secure communication systems, bathrooms with marble countertops, rainfall showers, and fittings finished in gold. The cost of such a conversion can exceed the purchase price of the aircraft itself. For a royal family conducting official state business, these aircraft are also diplomatically important, projecting an image of power, permanence, and prestige to whoever steps aboard. Chapter 6. The Economy Behind the Excess. At some point in a story like this, a reasonable person has to ask, where does the money come from? And how does it keep coming? The answer is structural, and it has everything to do with how Brunei's economy was organized as oil wealth began to flow. Because Brunei is an absolute monarchy, meaning power is not divided between elected governments and royal families. There was no mechanism to separate the country's oil revenues from the Sultan's personal finances in the way that other oil-rich nations eventually chose to do. The result was that for decades, the lines between national wealth and royal wealth were blurry at best and essentially non-existent at worst. Brunei established a national investment fund, the Brunei Investment Agency, to manage surplus oil revenues. The assets managed by that agency are estimated to be worth over $60 billion, though the precise figure is not publicly disclosed. The income generated by that fund, combined with the ongoing revenues from oil and gas production, creates a stream of wealth that has continued even as Brunei's production has declined from its peak. Brunei's citizens, meanwhile, receive significant government benefits funded by oil revenue. Free healthcare, free education, heavily subsidized housing, no income tax. The social contract in Brunei is built on the oil wealth, binding citizens to the state through genuine material benefit. Whether this arrangement is just or sustainable is a question that political scientists continue to debate. What is beyond debate is that it has produced, at the apex of the system, a concentration of personal luxury that the world has almost never seen in a single family. Chapter 7. The Controversies. No story this large exists without shadows. The Sultan of Brunei and the royal family have attracted significant international criticism over the decades. Criticism that exists in uncomfortable tension with the fascination that surrounds their wealth. In 1997, the Sultan's brother and former finance minister, Prince Jeffrey Bolkiah, became the subject of a cascade of lawsuits and controversies involving allegations of financial mismanagement, misappropriation of government funds, and personal behavior that drew widespread condemnation. The legal disputes between the brothers became international news, briefly lifting the veil on the extraordinary financial structures underlying the family's wealth. In 2019, Brunei announced the implementation of strict new laws based on a severe interpretation of religious statutes. The announcement triggered a major international backlash and briefly led some public figures and corporations to reconsider their associations with Brunei-connected properties and businesses. The tension between Brunei's extraordinary wealth, its genuine benefits for ordinary citizens, and its legal and political controversies creates a portrait that resists simple judgment. The Sultan is not simply a villain, as some critics portray. He is also not simply a benevolent monarch, as state media presents him. He is a complex figure, the product of an extraordinary set of historical circumstances, ruling a country whose entire modern identity was shaped by a geological accident underneath its soil. Chapter 8. What does this much wealth actually feel like? This is the question that documentaries like this one rarely try to answer honestly, because the truth is, we don't know. We can count the cars, we can measure the palace rooms, we can list the aircraft, we can track the investments, but what it actually feels like to exist inside that much wealth, to wake up every morning knowing that the question of money will never, in any practical sense, arise, is genuinely beyond most human imagination. Psychologists who study extreme wealth have noted that beyond a certain point, money stops providing the experiences most people associate with it. You can only sit in one room at a time. You can only wear one watch. You can only eat one meal. The 5,000 cars represent something other than transportation. They represent the pure abstract power of acquisition, the ability to say yes to anything, unlimited, forever. Whether that is a kind of freedom or a kind of prison is a philosophical question the Sultan has never, to our knowledge, been asked in public. The story of the Sultan of Brunei is ultimately the story of what happens when geological luck, historical timing, political structure, and personal appetite converge in one place, at one moment, around one family. It produced something the world had not quite seen before, not just wealth, but wealth at a scale that stopped being about need, or comfort, or even status, and became something closer to a philosophy, a statement about what is possible, a collection that is also a monument, a life lived so far outside ordinary human experience that it functions less as a biography and more as a thought experiment. What would you do if the answer to every question was yes? 5,000 cars, one palace with 788 rooms, a fleet of aircraft that makes international airlines look modest, an investment fund worth more than many nations' entire economies, and a country of fewer than 500,000 people, living tax-free, in a rainforest, on an island most of the world cannot find on a map. That is the secret life of the Sultan of Brunei. And whether it astonishes you, troubles you, or simply leaves you speechless,
It is, without question, one of the most remarkable stories wealth has ever told. If you found this documentary compelling, subscribe to Hidden Wealth for weekly deep dives into the lives, fortunes, and secrets of the world's most extraordinary individuals.